What's your protein source? Is that what you're saying? What's your protein source? My protein source, I hope, is none. Although I cheat a little here and there, of course. I get a little nut here, a little bean there. But I hope none. Because remember, proteins are unavailable to the human body until they're broken down into what? Amino acids. So you've got the stomach kind. We were just talking about that this morning again, how another good reason why the human being is not a protein eater is the low hydrochloric acid really in a Homo sapien versus that of an omnivore. And the fact that when you get down around 2 pH or a little below in the stomach, a few inches down, you have to get that all the way up to 7.5 to 8. Or you don't have any digestion going on well at all. You're not activating digestive enzymes. So for a human, in their duodenum, I don't know what the duodenal pH is supposed to be of an omnivore, I have no clue. But I can tell you in a herbivore and a frugivore, it's going to be about the same. Because to activate proper enzymatic action, amylase, tylan, you have to be up in the 7.5 to 8s. And believe it or not, it's also with trypsin and chymotrypsin, and they're involved in breaking down the polys and to the peptides to the amino acids. So it's just only the hydrochloric acid is involved in ripping the protein apart. Well, when you understand that, then why would you eat a protein if your body can't use it? Why would you think that it's some big important thing to have in your body when it's an acid hit? The body can't use a protein. The body requires some amino acids. But why would you think that? And that's part of the problem. Especially when you want health and vitality. The complex amino acid source is highly acidic. And that's a lot more nitrogen, phosphorus, all the things that counterbalance sodium, potassium, and particularly the twin sisters of calcium and magnesium. You know, you start bringing up phosphorus, guess who's going to be going bye-bye? The twin sisters, Cal Mag. And so either way you look at that. If you go too high with the electrolytes, we were talking about that in terms of getting these alkaline waters way up there, you can hurt yourself with, again, leaching phosphorus out of matrix as opposed to calcium. You know, you've got the twins, you got this rhythm of the twins, acid and base, and these two have to be, ionized properly and reach saturation properly. And that's more than the average person can understand, nor more than actually chemists can understand, in my opinion. I have had a lot of chemists come to me in trouble, and what I see is a big lack of understanding of the chemical world and the interactions of diets and things like that. So I don't know, it's just what I see. How do I get protein if I'm working out at a gym? Best Stefan from Sweden. You know you want to pump amino acids if you're working at the gym. We have a new muscle building form. It's called Muscles by Nature. And I'm building this for Anton and Mr. Olympia, and what we call Mr. Olympia, and a couple of other guys there. I'm building them for all bodybuilders and people that want to work out, that want to maintain a base balanced chemistry, but with a higher level of amino acids. And that's what we're looking for. You don't want an acidic product when you're building muscles, because when you acidify your body, you just lost all your factors of health. So you're forcing bulk muscles, and let me tell you, in that process, you're breaking down your kidneys, you're breaking down your bowels, you're breaking down all the body in acidosis just to look ripped. And that's okay, but it's you that suffer. It's the individual that suffers just to trying to look good and stuff. You can look good and still be all raw, you know. You know, Alan, I show you his picture a lot. And you can look ripped and be healthy ripped and have the flexibility. We talked this before. I'm a martial arts person, so I like the flexibility and I like the quiet mind to perceive the moves. So there's a lot of levels that are fun in this you can get into. But if you're going to work at the gym, I would detoxify slowly. I wouldn't even think about detoxification too much if that's your goal, is to just have a ripped body. In that way, I would pump green juices big time, and I would pump alfalfa like it's no tomorrow. I've got alfalfa juice powdered. I did add Corel in there for them, but I generally don't do that. But I've added a royal jelly, some real power hogs in there in terms of chemistry. Hard to get more chemistry than this in nature. Matter of fact, nobody gets more chemistry than this. All the superfoods. At a point, too much chemistry then becomes a problem. Even beneficial chemistry. More is not better. From Justin or any of these other people, more is not better in any way of the imagination. You would be better suited to understand the species that the Homo sapien is at. Look at the primates, comparative species pretty much, and look at that as opposed to crossing species like, well, cats are eating proteins. Yeah, well, they're a carnivore. Well, the omnivores eat not much. When you really look at omnivores, not much. Dogs more than anything. But now you're looking at this good dog food coming full of veggies. And veggies are actually least available than fruits to omnivores because omnivores have a smaller bowel than we. Anyone with a smaller or shorter GI tract than us has a harder time with vegetables. Vegetables are long, extensive digestive processes. Look at the design of a herbivore. Look at the design of an elephant or horse. And look at how much they eat compared to a silverback. Silverback doesn't eat that much compared to a horse who's always grazing. Just things to think about, That's what I would do but here's the problem. As soon as you start eating raw, I don't care if you just went on a lot of fruit for breakfast and you had salads and everything for the afternoon, you're still going to start detoxing. You cannot stop your body from wanting to be well and healthy. So go slow. Go real slow with that and pump up with the greens and the amino acids in that way. What about cold food? Store match all the time. I don't understand what that means. Cold food. I think there's a misconception with cold food. Because you have cold food to keep you warm. Cold food can't keep you warm. That's not true. Cold food hasn't anything to do with keeping you warm. That's a thyroid issue. That's the rate of metabolism. When you're looking at cold food, you're looking at base dominant food, but your body is base dominant. You actually, if you're going to use the word cold, you have to apply that to your body because your body is a base dominant body, not overly base dominant. That's important to understand. But it is base dominant. And so that means that on the colder side, you're healthier. So when you you have to also take in consideration your environmental influences. So when you go down to the tropics, you're in an acidic zone, and the foods are base dominant. So when you're looking at this, if you're suggesting cold, that would be consuming cold food in the winter up north. Well, if you're living up north and you're in trouble, then you can't get around it. That's nothing else. Warm up with something else, herbal teas or blankets. But your dietary nutritive mix for the Homo sapien is a base dominant food. You have to have a base dominant, meaning an alkaline dominant diet. Where the pHs are not above or somewhere in the 8 range. Or you change that blood, you influence the blood viscosity, pH, all of that, and nothing ever good comes of that. So there's a lot of reasons to look at these things. But I get where people are cold, but the reality is people are cold for a lot of reasons. If you're on a detoxification diet and you're in cold countries, you're going to be cold without fat. This is why people who live in Canada and especially further up in Alaska and stuff, they eat a lot of fat and blubber. Because it isn't the protein that keeps them warm. It could, but it's the fat that gets you on there, insulates and keeps you warm. So that's difficult because ketosis can result with that. Another form of acidosis. And so you got to be real careful. Man wasn't meant to live in these hostile environments. We do, and people love it. But for those few, have some greenhouses. I know there's that one Alaska guy that has growing an orange tree in a greenhouse way up in Alaska. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful done. Hand done by a young girl, 10 years old, I think. Beautifully done, beautifully done. Let me see, I've got a world of questions here. So so many here, guys. So, oh man. All right. Hi, Doc. This is, that's a tough word for me to pronounce, so I'm just going to spell it. Mummufucca. I apologize, my friend. Don't know how to pronounce that. Well, thanks for being here, and everywhere. Always willing to heal everyone. Such a total achievement. Oh, thanks, man. Thanks. I can always use good blessings. Thanks a lot. Some other people don't appreciate it, of course, but then there is those that are immature, those that want to tear down others, those that don't get things, and it's just sickening, They don't understand the fight we've been in just to bring purity and love to this planet. The battles and stuff like that. It's terrible stuff. Bless you, my friend. Now, I have just a few questions that might not necessarily require the same amount of responses. Okay, that's why I trust you and your synthesis ability. This world needs more of this kind of pills, not the same old crap they're constantly selling in a white and clean fashion and brand new names. I agree totally. Holy moly, that's simply pathetic. So feel free to take all the time you need to answer, but hell, you can just express an immediate spiritual silence as well. Sure, I'll enjoy watching your body reaction, tell you almost everything. Okay. All right. These are the points. Okay. Considering it from a very large perspective and knowing about the absolute classification of these things we humans use to call alkaloids, what's your idea about their role in biology and evolution and mutation of organisms? Well, I think alkaloids are very much like tannins. Alkaloids have always been a little hard on the liver, and tannins, of course, very hard on the kidneys and bladder. So I was a little addicted to sweet tea, but these tannins ripped my kidneys and bladder badly. And alkaloids can rip the liver badly and things. But in plants, as a rule, almost all plants have a form of alkaloids in them. And they're hitchhiking with other things. And I think the real problem comes in, my friend, when we extract alkaloids and use them in the treatment with pharmaceuticals. That's where you really extract the buffers and things. In nature, when you're eating a food that has licorice and stuff like this, these alkaloids don't hurt you. Comfrey, they've tried to shut down comfrey because the alkaloids in comfrey, yet comfrey leaf. You'll find more in your roots, of course, and you could argue the roots maybe are the less desirable of a plant for humans. But when you get in trouble, some of the roots, burdock root is an incredible root. All the barbarous families are roots pretty much. They're incredible for liver. When you get in the roots, you're more into the GI tract, the liver, the pancreas, that sort of thing. And when you research them, that's what they're all good for. And so, I don't know what to say about that, other than that. Alkaloids can be a real tear, and so can tannins. But so can any chemistry. Look at arsenic by itself. Anytime you start breaking down buffering bonds and synergistic bonds that make that part of chemistry nutritive, then you start creating isolates. And that's when you get the real hits, is when you break these down into isolates. In terms of the idea of alkaloids and things like that, I think they are more hepatic. More hepatic about overstimulation of these tissues, like anything else, of course. What's your idea about their role in? Okay, it's interesting to note that some of them are some sort of nutrition that can be toxic at the same time. Well, I think that goes into, again, the synergistic action that they hold with their counterparts, their brethren. When we're eating a fruit, it's like each one of us individually, we all come together. All together, we're the piece of fruit. And so when we start tearing us apart from that, then we each can act individually, has a more detrimental effect on the whole as opposed to acting as a whole. So, in that way, I suppose. I don't run across alkaloid problems, to tell you the honest truth. I don't work in that field too much because I do use comfrey and licorice a lot. Love them. Love them. And if you're running low blood pressure and you're going out with it, you want licorice root bad, because that'll get your blood pressure up quick, better than granulars. So licorice is vital in herbology and in the world of acts as natural cortisol, regulating blood sugars. It has all kinds of good stuff. So there's a lot of good stuff here for people in that. But I think that, like you say, when you get into chemistry and stuff, and they get into alkaloids and isolates like this, and they're doing their lab work, and they see alkaloids having an effect on this, they're using the alkaloids as an isolate. That's how I feel about it. I think synergistically, everything has a level of consciousness to it that's set in the matrix of that expression, whether it's a fruit, a berry, a melon, a plant, or whatever. And in that expression, that is a nutritive. And however way that works in the human body that way, to look at all that is gigantic to me, because we have to start with a new lab and a new awareness and how we trace these things out, instead of where we are now in biochemistry with so many theories. It's just not good, my opinion. But I think any chemistry can be toxic to you. Vitamin A, good example. Gerson was recommending 100,000 units of A and 100,000 units of beta carotene in their cancer protocols. Well, I've always held that to be way toxic. Oils are toxic, and you get way out there in individual oils, and you can get up into some toxicity ranges. So I actually agreed with the FDA on that one. I just thought that was a wrong move to try to, because when you understand the lymphatic system as we teach it here, and you guys are getting that, things become less of a mystery anymore. You start to see the real problems. And as a rule, the only where you're going to be concerned with alkaloids would be in the herbal side of that. But your vegetables are very much herbs. And so then you're more in your roots and tubers and barks and stuff like that, maybe. Let me see here. Unique properties from this, both physical and emotionally and spiritually. Exactly. See, and that's where I've been privy. They've showed me some things, so I'm up to speed on plants on this planet and stuff like this to a certain extent. But I think that for me, I'm here more to awaken and to help people out of suffering, as opposed to get too lost in this sort of world. I had my years of that where I just would pore over all the books and just dig into it. But I put all that aside years ago when I realized I was becoming an intellectual hound. And I was getting confused because I was a fruitarian years before that, and everything just fit. It just made sense. It fit. I felt good. And then I opened up health food stores. And then come to mind, oh, yogurt. Oh, look, it's got beneficial bacteria. It really has a bacteria for itself. Let's face it. Lactobacillus bifidus. We don't have to supplement those. Look at that. And then, put a lot of fruit in it. It's healthy. So Columbia yogurt, Dannon yogurt. I sold different yogurts in the health food store, raw milk yogurts. I got into raw milk a little bit, raw milk cheeses, and it's like, it's good for you, right? It's raw. So I come through a stiff learning curve because I felt like I undo all the years that I did fruitarian and stuff. I felt like I almost undid them by going and eating healthy nuts, grains, whole grains. And then when I became friends of Jensen, we had a lot of talk about that because he fell into the same thing. Whole grains, raw milk, cheeses. I mean, that was the day. Carrot juice fast and stuff like that. Well, I hope that I'm teaching you a much higher level of thinking, because we didn't go very far in those earlier years with that. I mean, there were some credible cases that we cleaned up, but nothing like what we're doing now. And you have to understand that growth and awareness sometimes breeds simplicity, not more intellectualism. More intellectualism just takes you down the world of being lost more and more and more. Very unorthodox behavior from these compounds. Yeah, well, you always have your radical components, I suppose, but when you lose your buffering friends, you can be a lot more radical, like arsenic. There are a lot of things like that, cyanide in apple seeds and stuff like that, guys. So, I mean, you start compounding those little puppies, and they're not too friendly either. But in their proper ratioed perspective, they have a nutritive hit. Just because we don't understand where that nutritive hit is, that's part of the problem in this gigantic, it's almost as if God says, so you think you understand me? All right, look at this. And it's just like every level we expose becomes deeper in its intricacies and its infiniteness, and it's like now there's no more Big Bang theory. There's so many galaxies that they're unfolding. So it's okay. There's no beginning and no ending. There's nothing else we can say about the universe. It's so massive. So I think really to the point is we need some good labs and some good research in the future. And I'm hoping if Discovery Channel comes aboard in any way, that will excite them to take a look at some of these things, and just excitement after excitement. Because we can prove that we can regenerate you at levels that are just shockingly decrepit. We can regenerate you. And that goes a long way in understanding. So now what we have to understand is, explain that in the world of chemistry and alkaloids and things like this, and that's a hard chew, because we can't even explain how we are treating diseases and killing all these people in chemistry. They don't even understand how their chemistry is killing all these people. So you see where we are? I wouldn't worry about it myself. It might be a cop-out thought, but I'm not into so much of that sort of thing. And deep relationship with the neurotransmitters and precursors, in addition to all the bunch of things we know about that from different scientific points of view. Pretty pointless, especially from the neurological side. Yeah, I mean, there's a certain realm there that I wouldn't get into, like the precursors and the production of neurotransmitters and that sort of thing, because Jesus, when you're sitting down talking to your clients, it might be good verbiage here, I like to know. But when you're sitting down with your clients, if your brain is too crammed, you'll sit there and not know what you're going to say to them, because you have too much upstairs. I remember my first appointment, I didn't know what to say to her. She lost all her fingernails doing a detox in the Bahamas. She just went from a New York City diet to a fruitarian diet. And of course, remember, when you start detoxifying, those things that are weak can leave you, including your hair. Teeth can loosen up. Yeah, remember nature. Nature doesn't stand for weaknesses. So, you got to consider these things, of course. This is why in detox we say, sometimes slow up a little bit. Because nature wants to get rid of the things that are hindering it from expressing itself at greater levels. And humans have hindered that expression considerably. But I get what you're saying here, absolutely. But I'm like you. I like to toss things around. We chew on some intellectualism, Marcia and Attila and me. We love that stuff. Just we're looking to prove everything we do. We know we did it. Now we want to be able to explain it to you the best way we can in scientific terms. But again, when you're in a world of extreme theories, in a world where they don't understand chemistry, in a world where they're making toxic substances that have fatal events as high up on the totem pole, where they're maiming and hurting so many people, like the Accutane people, when you're doing it at this level, where millions and millions of people are being killed and maimed worldwide, there's a serious problem with this. And so we have to change. So then I think it's where we merge scientifically with that, because it doesn't matter scientifically anymore. We're so hurting as a species, we're going with what works. Then we try to explain with what works through chemistry as much as I can, I don't get much below subatomic levels of explanations. I don't get much below the colloid science and the science of colloids, of course, and the electrolytes and protons and electrons and protons, that sort of thing. I don't get into the nano, sub-nano. I think these are levels man can't even go there and understand at all. And if you don't understand the influences of the inorganic chemistry, as I like to look at it, how are you going to understand the world of nano levels? So I think we have to shelf some things for a while, get people healthy. For those that are willing to look at labs and look at things that we're doing, absolutely, look how we do those things, how we increase the medulla of the adrenal glands, increasing the production of neurotransmitters and the production of neurotransmitters out of the chemistry of one's being consumed. Yeah, all of that. How would you start explicitating? If you ever wanted to. I think that we can understand a bit more if we approach from a non-dual and strictly biological chemistry way, the way you usually do, I guess. Well, here's the thing. A non-dual reality is a reality of one. That's pure consciousness. The dual reality is chemistry and physics. And that's That's the dual reality. When you pull away from the dual reality, chemistry and physics merge and become pure energy, which then merges and becomes pure awareness, which is pure consciousness. As we move out from pure consciousness, everything then fractionalizes and becomes dualistic in nature. And then as it takes on its different components, it takes on different shapes, different sizes, different forms, and then you have different things to look at. I mean, everything is based upon that. So pulling away from dual reality is pulling yourself back into the single reality of the all. You can look at it that way, or there's a lot of people that look at dimensions. You have a 3-dimensional reality, 5-dimensional reality, you have all those. But it's easier to look at it as dual single reality. And it's just easier for one to, and simple for one to, because the simplicity of consciousness is that it's already present, ever present. The complexity is how it manifests in duality and fractionalizes itself through magnetics first, physics, energy first, and then into the physical world, into isolates of chemistry, of elements and things like that. So it's just amazing. It's just amazing to explain it from that level going down. You know, how thought in its energeticness creates energy of movement. And of course thought moves energy and creates form. Well then emotions, of course, drives form, drives thought, the desire of that which is, that's the active principle. And then in the physical body, of course, is really just chemical processes and neurological processes. The awareness comes through the consciousness, seeps through all the bodies, seeps through all the chemistry, and seeps through all the atoms. So it's a big thing. We teach it in class. It's too much here, but we teach that in our class. And this level 1, I thought we did pretty good. We really went after that and brought that down from consciousness. And we have our new God Worlds charts. If you guys have seen them, printed charts of the God Worlds, and that's how you can have a better understanding of that. Or get Twitchell's work, books, Key to Secret Worlds, Tiger's Fangs, where he explains the different heavens, as Jesus talked about, the different rooms of my Father's mansion, the different states of consciousness as regarded into Buddhism and Hinduism, that sort of thing. Things that have been mapped out by the spiritual giants. Now that's fun too, and then looking at that. I think that things that pull me into more finiteness, I'm avoiding now, because my body just does not like finiteness. I don't want to be pulled there. I don't care about it. You can't explain there. You're more individualized there, like alkaloids and tannins and things like this, coumarins, and all the other active principles that are out there, which are being labeled every day. New active principles are being found in plants and given labels every day. So it's like this is a world of massiveness, but it's a world of deception too, because this is the chemical world of illusion, of duality. And it's simply the game. And this game can be played out on the scientific world. It can be played out in the worlds of housewives, in the worlds of factory workers. It's played out everywhere. It's still the game. So whole is always better than fractionalized, no matter what. And when you fractionalize, that's when you start seeing symptoms from that. Negative symptoms sometimes from that. But it's like estrogen or testosterone, we can give that back to you. Or you can take nitric oxide, insane stuff like that. So I get where you're coming here. Then I think it's accepted that masculine has a really nice parental relationship with no less than ephedrine. Well, yeah, I mean, of course you're going to find, I think, your masculine and female principles in chemistry. Oh, yeah. I look at acid and base as male and female. And then when you look at ephedrine or epinephrine or norepinephrine or dopamines or acetylcholines or anything, or your corticosteroids, you can look at them as male and female principles. But if you look at them as male and female principles, you'll find more female principles in the human body than male principles, using the acid as the male principle and the base as the female principle. Now, there's a lot of males that accumulate in the human body as byproducts, metabolitic waste and the like, and they become the problem if females are not being consumed to buffer them, and where the men have been consumed at a high rate, damaging in terms of proteins, damaging the eliminative organs and stuff, so the females now have a much harder way to go. You can get into chemistry and the feminine and the masculine, oh, absolutely. I love to do that myself. Your different elements. You've got your base elements. You've got your cal, meg, sodium, potassium, all your earthly elements. Those are generally base elements or anionic in nature.